Welcome back to EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex, and today we're diving into a topic that's keeping a lot of enterprise leaders up at night: AI governance and EU AI Act readiness. We're specifically looking at what this means for businesses in Tampere and across Europe, with a hard deadline just around the corner, August 2nd, 2026. Sam, when you hear that date, what's your first reaction?
That date should send shivers down every CTO's spine. We're talking about full enforcement of the EU AI Act, and the reality is sobering. 73% of European enterprises don't have comprehensive AI governance frameworks in place. Meanwhile, they're expecting compliance costs to balloon past $2 million annually. So we're looking at a perfect storm of unpreparedness and escalating expense.
That's a massive gap. You've got 3/4 of enterprises basically unprepared, yet they're all bracing for serious costs. Let's break this down a bit. What exactly changes on that August 2026 deadline? Is it like flipping a switch, or has this been phased in?
It's technically a full enforcement date, but the groundwork has been laid over time. The EU AI Act categorizes systems by risk: prohibited, high risk, limited risk, and minimal risk. And here's the critical part. About 15% of enterprise AI deployments fall into that high-risk category, which means extensive documentation, bias audits, and human oversight. These aren't nice-to-haves anymore. They're legal requirements.
High-risk systems. And what are we actually talking about here in practical terms? Like, when a company says they're using AI, what counts as high risk in the EU's eyes?
Think recruitment algorithms that screen job candidates, AI systems making credit decisions, law enforcement support tools, or anything touching critical infrastructure. If your AI system affects fundamental rights or public safety, it's probably high risk. That's where the regulatory hammer comes down hardest.
So for a Tampa enterprise, and Finland's a pretty tech-forward country, if they've rolled out AI in HR, credit scoring, or other sensitive areas, they're already in the crosshairs. What does compliance actually look like on the operational level?
It's multi-layered. First, you need risk-based classification of everything you're running. Then documentation, and I mean thorough documentation. We're talking training data provenance, model cards, impact assessments. You need algorithmic audits to catch bias and discriminatory outcomes. And crucially, you need human-in-the-loop governance, so humans stay in control, not the other way around.
Documentation sounds manageable, but let's talk about something that's becoming a lot more common: agentic AI. These are autonomous agents that can make decisions without human approval at every step. How does that complicate governance?
This is where things get really thorny. Agentic systems can perform multi-step reasoning and take actions autonomously. The problem is, traditional compliance frameworks assume a human is reviewing each decision. With agents, you've got real-time autonomous decision-making happening constantly, and 62% of enterprise AI investment is now flowing into agentic systems: supply chain optimization, customer service, autonomous operations.
So the industry is rushing toward agentic AI, but the regulatory framework isn't really designed for it yet. How do you bridge that gap?
You have to get ahead of it. For high-risk agentic systems, you need continuous monitoring and detailed logging of every decision the agent makes. You need clear escalation pathways so a human can jump in if something goes sideways. You need explainability. The agent has to be able to justify its actions. And you need regular performance assessments against ethical and compliance metrics. Basically, you're building an audit trail for autonomy.
That sounds like a lot of infrastructure work. Let's pivot to governance frameworks. You can't just bolt compliance onto an organization. It has to be built in. What does effective AI governance actually look like from a structural standpoint?
Exactly. Governance isn't a compliance checkbox. It's a competitive advantage. Organizations embedding governance early get faster deployment cycles, stronger stakeholder trust, and regulatory certainty. There are 5 core pillars to effective enterprise AI governance. First, clear organizational principles around how AI gets used. Second, accountability structures that define who owns what decisions.
So you're saying governance actually speeds things up rather than slowing them down? That seems counterintuitive to a lot of execs who see compliance as friction.
It's completely counterintuitive until you think about the alternative. Without governance, you get ad hoc deployments, conflicting standards, rework when regulators come knocking, and systems that fail because nobody understood the risks. With governance, your teams know what's acceptable, deployment follows a clear path, and you're not scrambling on August 2nd, 2026.
Let's talk practical. If a Tampere enterprise is hearing this and thinking, we've procrastinated, what do we do now? What's the immediate action plan?
Start with a maturity assessment. You need to understand where you actually are, what AI systems exist, how they're governed today, what documentation you have, what gaps exist. This is often done through readiness scans that take a few weeks. From there, you can prioritize. Get your high-risk systems mapped and documented first, then build governance infrastructure around them.
A readiness scan sounds like a smart first move. Are there frameworks or tools that help with this, or is it mostly custom consulting?
There are structured approaches. Many consultancies, including AetherMIND, have developed frameworks specifically for EU AI Act readiness. They typically include risk classification templates, governance model references, and compliance checklists tailored to different industries. But the work is usually hybrid, some templated assessment, then customization based on your specific systems and risk profile.
And once an enterprise has that picture, what comes next in the governance design phase?
You establish AI-led architecture, essentially designing your governance model to handle the technical and operational complexity of your AI systems. This involves defining how systems will be monitored, how decisions will be escalated, how bias and performance will be audited, and how supply chain accountability will work. It's architecture in the same sense that enterprise IT architecture is. It's the blueprint for how AI operates safely at scale.
Supply chain accountability is something I think a lot of companies miss. They build their own models but rely on third-party vendors for components or data. How does the EU Act handle that?
The Act makes you responsible for the whole chain. If you're using a third-party data processor, model provider, or hosting service, you're still accountable for compliance. So you need vendor assessment processes, contractual terms that enforce compliance, and ongoing monitoring of third parties. It's not something you can hand off and forget about.
That's a significant responsibility. For enterprises reading data heavily from various sources or using cloud AI services, this could be a real compliance challenge. How should they think about vendor risk?
Start by mapping your dependencies. Which vendors are critical to your AI systems? Are they providing data, models, infrastructure, or all three? Then assess their governance maturity. Do they understand the EU AI Act? Can they audit their own systems? Do they have compliance roadmaps? Finally, lock in contractual requirements for compliance, transparency, and audit rights. You want contractual teeth.
This is getting real complex real fast. The stakes are high: regulatory penalties, operational disruption, competitive disadvantage if you're not ready. For listeners in Tampere or across Europe, what's the bottom line message here?
Don't wait. August 2026 is not as far away as it feels. Enterprises that start today have time to assess, design governance, and implement controls. Those waiting until 2025 or later will be scrambling. Governance is not a sprint. It's something you build systematically. And the earlier you start, the more sustainable and defensible your approach becomes.
Sam, final question. If you're talking to a CEO or board who's hearing about this for the first time, what's the one thing they need to understand?
Governance and compliance are not obstacles to innovation. They're foundations for it. The companies that embed AI governance early will deploy AI faster, with more confidence and with stronger stakeholder trust. It's the competitive edge in an AI-driven world.
That's a great note to end on. Listeners, if you want to dive deeper into this topic, risk classifications, governance frameworks, agentic AI oversight, and specific readiness strategies, head over to etherlink.ai. You'll find the full article with detailed guidance on AI lead architecture, maturity assessment, and compliance roadmaps. Thanks for joining us on EtherLink AI Insights. Sam, always great to break down these complex topics with you.
Thanks, Alex. And to our listeners, governance might feel abstract, but it's the difference between thriving in 2026 and struggling. Get started today.